Good day to you. It's good to be able to be with you today. Sorry I wasn't here last week. I just had a little illness and I wasn't able to do a recording. Doing a lot better today. And I would like to ask you to open your Bibles. If you would open your Bibles, clear your minds, and try to clean your heart as we look at God's words tonight. 1 Samuel. In 1 Samuel, there in chapter 11, we are going to read about, I believe, a very good man. A man that, in some ways, I think he was a great man. We're going to read about this great man, and this is in the story and in the time of David, but this is not the man I'm talking about. I'm talking about another, I believe, great man. Let's start reading there in chapter 11. It happened in the spring of the year, as the time when kings go out to battle, that David sent Joab and his servants with him and all Israel, as they destroyed the people of the Ammons and then also destroyed others. But David remained at Jerusalem. David was a warrior king, we think of him being, but for some reason at this time he didn't go out. They sent him out. That's not a disgrace for a king to do that. He a lot of times had other things to do, but he was supposed to, keep in track, keep going and leading the army, and he could do that as long as he corresponded. Well, matter of fact, it says, then it happened one evening that David arose from his bed and walked on the roof of the king's house. And from the roof he saw a woman bathing, and the woman was very beautiful to behold. Somebody said, what are you talking? Well, that part of the country, and being in the heat, they would go out into the roof. Now, a lot of people, and this is funny, a lot of people have looked at this woman and said, well, that's a shame she was out on the roof bathing. But that's not something, because privacy was in a house. All the houses was about the same height, and going onto the roof with usually a sidewall, that was a very cool place. It was a place that they would do their laundry, do their bathing and stuff like that because of privacy. All but those that could be higher than them. Probably the only one of the very few that was higher than the homes around there would be the king's palace. So here it was. He was above all the city. They were the lowest, and he looked and he saw this woman. And notice it says, so David sent and inquired about the woman. And someone said, is this not Bathsheba, the daughter of Eliam, the wife of you? Say that for me. We have to edit that. Uriah. I always, the wife, is this not the wife of Uriah, the Hittite? Then David sent messengers and took her, and she came to him, and he laid with her, for she was cleansed from her impurity, and then she returned to her house. Now, I would like to say this. Bathing, we think of bathing something people do every day. I hate to tell you this, but that's a very new custom of mankind. It was a very new custom. I could even remember reading in a doctor's book that a friend of mine had, a doctor book that was written in 1905. And he, in that, recommended that people bathe once a week. No more than once a week, because it might do some harm to the oil of the skin. And in the wintertime, don't overdo it. If it's cold, don't do it once a week. That was a book written by a doctor book back in 1905. Back in the days before that, usually bathing was something that was done. My mom, raised in the 30s, she said they would bathe once a week. Would you believe that? Once a week. That's when they would bathe, once a week. They washed their feet every night, she said, but they bathed once a week. here this woman was up bathing. Well, there was a reason for that too, because of the time of her impurity. Basically what that is talking about was the woman's ministry, the minister. Once a month, and after they had this, then that was a common practice for the women to what? Afterwards, to bathe and clean themselves, because they needed it after going through the period. So here it was. There's a key to that. One thing that we can know from that, Biology 101, she wasn't pregnant. Right, brother? She wasn't pregnant. She was pure. She was just and he saw that beauty and he went in. And it says that David sent and laid with her. And then she returned to her own house. And the woman conceived. So she sent and told David and said, I am with child. So this wasn't something that happened the next morning, but sometime in the next month, because they knew that when the cycle was coming, the cycle did not come. So in a matter of weeks, 5 weeks maybe, she said, hey, she knew that she was with child. So she sent to David. And what did David do? He said, and then David sent to Joab, the general in charge of the army, his nephew that was leading the army, and saying, send to me Uriah, the Hittites. And Jacob sent Uriah to David. So one of his lesser lieutenants, he sent him to the why? Well, probably he wanted a report. It wasn't uncommon for him to call to somebody to come and get a report. Because notice, when Uriah came to him, David asked him, saying, it said, how is Joab doing? And how the people was doing, and how the war was, how it was going along. He was wanting to know. And the man would think, well, I came back to give a report. That's something that was done probably every week, if not more often, would you not think? They didn't have a telegraph, they didn't have telephone, but they would send somebody back. So he sent back this man he asked for that man to come. And David said to Uriah, go down to your house and wash your feet. He came, gave the report. He said, go down to your house, wash your feet. So Uriah departed from the king's house, and a gift of food from the king followed him. But Uriah slept at the door of the king's house with all the servants of his lord, and did not go down to his house. Wow, the man came in to give a message, and then he said, now go to your house. He didn't go. Why? Why did he not go home? Because he had a sense of duty. If he was a man of a leader of the army, he did not want to be sent back home. Basically, it was almost something that you would send a lesser soldier on a message. He did not want to be away. Why did he not want to be away? We're going to find out in a little bit, because he's going to tell us why he did not want to go away. Now, David wanted him to go to his wife. If she was just over a month pregnant, guess what? To go back home, he could, the child came a little early. Because that happens, right? But notice, he said, go down. And so Uriah slept in the door. So when they told David, verse 10, saying, Uriah did not go down to his house, David said to Uriah, did you not come from a journey? Why did you not go down to your house? You came on a long journey. Go and rest in your house. Why are you sleeping on the floor of the servants? And Uriah said to David, now listen to this. I know it says this man was a Hittite, right? And the Hittites was from what we call Turkey. It was a great nation. Well, I say that, we know that now. Back in the 1930s, 40s, even into the 50s, they used to say the Bible talked about the Hittites and said it was a made-up name. then they discovered there was a nation of the Hittites that controlled all the way down to even invaded Egypt at one time. They was a great nation. But here, he was a Hittite, but he was somebody, notice, he was fighting in the Lord's army. Remember that. He was doing what? Fighting in the Lord's army. We can see even in the Old Testament, some people that was not of Abraham's seed was still fighting in the Lord's what? Army. Matter of fact, we know he knew it was the Lord because look, he said, why did you not go down? And Uriah said to David, the ark and Israel and Judah are dwelling in tents. Notice he put his first thing that he mentioned was the ark. He's talking about the ark of the covenant, the very presence of God that had the rod of Moses, that had the 10 Commandments, that had the bread, the manna in all of this. He was saying, how can I do that? How can I go to a house when here we are, we still have the presence of God living in a tent? You talk about something. How can I do that? What did he want to see? What did he want to see done? He wanted the temple of God built. That's what it tells me there. David was promised to build a temple. It ended up being given to his son. But even this man that was a Hittite knew the purpose of God's army of that day was making a place for God's dwelling place of God among man. That happened so that Jesus could come and make a dwelling place for man among God. That's why he do that. He said God, and then he said, oh, and not only that, he said, is not God, he looked and said, well, the ark of Israel, and did this. Why? Because we can see that it was here, the ark and Israel, the whole country, and then Judah was not dwelling in all of them. And then it says this, and dwelling in tents, and my Lord, he said, and my Lord, Jacob, Joseph, and the servants of my Lord are encamped in the open field. He said, the leaders and my companion in the war, where are they living? In tents, in open fields, not on their farmland, not in their homeland, but in a open field. He said, shall I then go to my house to eat and drink and to lie with my wife? As you live and as your soul liveth, I will not do this thing. He said no to the king. The king said, take your pleasure. He said, I can't take my pleasure when God's house, when God's people, and my fellow soldiers are in tents. Man, you talk about somebody that realized that he put God, he put God, he put his nation, and he put his neighbor, because he lived in Judah. He put them before of his own self. We can see this happen. And notice, so he said this. Then David said to Uriah, wait here today also and tomorrow. And then I will what? Then I will send you. He said, if you wait today and tomorrow, then I will let you depart. So Uriah remained in Jerusalem that day and the next. Now when David called him, he ate and drank before him, and he made him drunk. And at the evening he went out to lay on his own bed with the servants of the Lord, but he did not go down to his house. David was a man after God's own heart, but he didn't always follow his heart. He tried to get him drunk. No, he got him drunk. Why? He thought he could tempt him to break his own conscience with alcohol. Has that ever happened to anybody? Has that ever happened to anyone? Many times. Many times. When I was a chaplain in the Texas prison system, there was a man serving in there that's brother was an elder in the Lord's church. He had an uncle that was a gospel preacher. But he was going to be in there serving 5 99-year sentences. That's right, he had 5. Why? Because he had got blind drunk and other things, and he had shot and killed 2 highway patrols and 3 other people. He had the death penalty, but because of the plea and everything, the government said no, so he got 5 99 years stacked on top of one another. Because he got drunk and alcohol allowed him. He said, I know I done it. He said, I don't remember doing it, but I know that I, what? Done it. Well, this man, David, tried to get him, but even drunk, he did not go back. He did not do what David wanted him to do. So what happened the next morning? David said, okay. So he gave him a message to give back to the general Joab. He gave him a message, and the message said this: send this man into battle. Send him into battle. And when he's there, you have, in the midst of it, then you have everybody with him to retreat and leave him there so he will be killed. Man, isn't that something? Here he couldn't get the man to sin. So he tried, he said, okay. And by the way, would it have been a sin to Joaz to do that, had done that? I think it would have been. And I'm not going to read it in detail, but I'm going to tell you what happened. He went there, Josiah saw the note. He read it, what he had told him to do. But he didn't do it that way. He got the courageous men, and they see he sent him with the courageous men into the middle of the battle. The people came out of the city they would fight. And these people were so courageous, and he was so, that they continued to attack. Because he knew what type of men these were. They was going to attack the enemies and not stop. They kept on. And they went all the way to the wall where the archers could pick them off from above. He sent them, and he died a hero with heroes. Not the way that David wanted him to be killed. He ended up being killed with heroes, as a hero among heroes. Isn't that something? Because it says that he sent him down, the general sent him down with courageous men. And you know, I hope the Lord will help me to be courageous. And I hope you and I, whoever we are, that we don't fall to those that try to get us to sin. I hope that we don't fall and realize, yea, we are going to die. Every one of us. In the battle for God, let us die. But let us die with courageous men. And let those that die with us say that they died with a courageous man. Are you courageous for God? People will try to get you to go home, rest. But we have to realize that God, country, and our neighbors, our fellow man, are first. The good news is going to follow up next week, because we see what the consequence that this great man had on David. Because it did. David had a consequence. But this man can teach us a lesson as he taught David a lesson and helped David to be really more of a man after God's own heart. God be with you till we meet again. Duty begins with God.
Sounds good.